Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Senator Marco Rubio. All right, tax reform.
Yep.
Major issue facing the Senate right now, as well as the House. Talk to me about where you see this process going from here.
Well, here's where I want it to end up. We need a tax reform plan that does two things, and it has to do both of them. It has to make America more competitive and actually make America the best place in the world for companies to create jobs and grow businesses. But it also has to take care of workers. There was a time when workers in America were heroes. We looked up to the people that worked 8 to 10 hours a day, 5-6 days a week. Now the heroes are the software designer and the innovator in Silicon Valley, and that's fine. We want them to continue to succeed, but we've left millions of Americans who work for a living behind while everything else costs more. So tax reform has to be about both things, and if it isn't doing both things, then it isn't going to be good tax reform, and that's the direction I want this to continue to go.
So is the Senate bill, the House bill, is it in that direction?
Well, both of them have elements that I like, and we're about to start the debate on the Senate floor. The one thing I'm pushing for is an increase in the child tax credit, and it's two reasons for that. Raising children is expensive, but also it's a way of allowing people who work to keep more of their hard-earned money. And part of it is we have to, and we're not there yet, we have to make it refundable against payroll tax. Close to half the voters in America, the only tax they pay is the payroll tax. But for them, that's a lot of money.
Right, because the way, I just want to be clear, because sometimes we get lost in the weeds. So the way it currently is in the Senate bill right now is that it's refundable against, what is it, refundable against income taxes,
right,
but not against the payroll tax, meaning that those who are the least earners, folks who are on probably need the break the most, won't actually see the full benefit.
So if you make over $47,000 a year, you can start applying it against your income tax to get up to the $2,000. If you're under that, you can only apply it up to 15% of your wages over a certain amount, and which I think they lowered to like $3,500. The problem is for a lot of people, a single mom with 3 kids making $35,000 a year, the increase is a little bit of an increase, but not enough. We should allow her to deduct it all the way up to 15.3%, the total value of her payroll tax liability, up to $2,000, and the cutoff shouldn't be above $3,000. It should be every penny she makes, not after the first $3,000.
So if those changes are not made, so that it would benefit that mother of 3 who earns, $30,000 a year, will you vote for the bill or vote against the bill?
So I've shied away from making pronouncements like that because it's usually not productive. There may come a point where something like that would need to be said. Let me just say this right now. I am confident that we're going to get there in the Senate bill. I can't imagine us having a Senate bill that cuts taxes for corporations and big companies, but doesn't allow a working mother raising 3 kids making $35,000 a year to keep more of her money that she earns by working. This is not welfare. You got to work to get this. I can't imagine us passing a tax bill that does that. So I think we're going to get there, and if we do, I'll be an enthusiastic supporter of this plan. If we don't, I should come back on your show and talk about that.
I want to play some sound that President Trump said with regards to recently about the tax cuts. Let's play that now.
We'll restore America's competitive edge so we can bring back our jobs. We want to bring our jobs back to our country. We were decimated over the last 40 years. We want to bring our jobs back to the United States.
He's referring to the fact that you're going to lower the corporate tax rate from 35% to 20%. The reality is that's not going to bring corporations back into the United States, is it?
Well, it might allow them to bring some of their money back to reinvest, but ultimately, we've lost jobs how companies have made money over the last 25 years is not by growing necessarily. It's by figuring out a way to save money on taxes, moving to jurisdictions where the taxes are cheaper, and going to places where labor costs less. So it's not, they haven't increased productivity. They're not making more of something or better of something. A lot of these companies are making money because they can make it cheaper somewhere else, both on taxes and on labor. We can help with the tax part. We can take away that incentive, but on the labor part, we still have a challenge. And so on that part is why you want to attract manufacturing back at the high end of manufacturing. It pays more, but people need to have the skills. We have to have programs to train people to do this work. There's not enough of that happening. So if someone today loses their job at 50 and 51 years of age, it's so hard for them to get trained for a new job and so expensive that for many people they can't.
I want to break down what you just said because it's very important. The first part that you talked about was bring their money back onto shore.
Right.
And the assumption is, under this plan, is that they will reinvest reinvest that money into creating new jobs. I just want to show you, read something that was in the Wall Street Journal. Gary Cohn, who's the president's chief economic advisor, spoke at a Wall Street Journal conference for CEOs last week, and the interviewer was Wall Street Journal editor Gerald Baker, asked the executives, this was CEOs in the room, asked them to raise their hands if they plan to invest more of their money into their companies if their tax bills are lowered. And few raised their hands. And Cohen was shocked, and he said, why aren't there more hands up? The executive's response is in keeping with the results of surveys this year by Bank of America. If companies are allowed to repatriate profits from overseas at a lower tax rate, another provision of the bill, most say they would use their funds to pay down debt, buy their own stock, or look for possible mergers. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to speed up automation as well, which is another area that you're going to cost. So I don't see. So the president's premise that this bring this money home is going to create more jobs or stimulate wages.
So
it's a fallacy.
So that's correct. A lot of the companies will take their money back. They'll either pay out in dividends, they'll buy back shares to raise the stock price, they'll pay down debt. And some of them will do that. There's no doubt. I don't dispute that at all. What we're trying to do is take away the disincentive. We're trying to take away the disincentive to investing here in the first place. So if you're starting a new business or you're seeking to expand to a new line of work, you don't want people to say, I'm not doing it in America, I'm doing it in Ireland because I can do it cheaper over there because the taxes are lower. So in that sense, the president's right. That part of it is true. The second point about automation in and of itself does not have to be difficult, does not have to be destructive, because automation requires someone to build the automated system. It will displace the worker that does that job now, but it'll create a new jobs building the machine. That new job building the machine will pay more, but you have to train people with the skills to do that work. And perhaps the skills to do that work exist in another country like Germany that have better job training programs, and in another jurisdiction like Ireland where the taxes are lower. So this is only the tax part of it. That alone will not be enough.
But when we talk about the tax rate for corporations being 35%, that's just on the books. The effective tax rate is much lower. Almost no corporations pay 35%.
I do not disagree that some of the projections being made about lowering the corporate tax rate are inflated. I personally call for 25%. The president wanted 15. I think that's how we settled at 20. I think it will have a positive economic impact. I don't think it'll be as dynamic as some people think it will be.
What's the problem? What's the bigger problem facing working class Americans? Is it their taxes are too high, or their wages haven't kept up with inflation over the year, or their wage stagnation?
I think their biggest problem is they don't have money left over at the end of the month to pay for basic goods.
That's a wage issue.
So it's both a wage and it's a wage issue and a tax issue in some sense.
So under this tax plan,
because if you cut their taxes, they keep more of their money. But it is ultimately a wage issue.
But let's talk about how much money they're going to keep under this plan. As I understand it, an individual who earns maybe $60,000, $70,000 a year might see a $900 benefit in their taxes or in this plan. Does that sound about right?
Well, it depends on the child tax credit and all sorts of different dynamics.
Right.
If you're talking about two singles that are married making $60,000, it may be $900. If they have children, it'll be more. But again, I'm not claiming that a $2,000 child tax credit is going to suddenly make someone, wealthy or prosperous. There's no doubt the wage issue is a big problem, and the reason is we have a service-based economy where a lot of the jobs being created in America, even if you see these job numbers, wages are not going up, and the cost of things are going up.
Under Reagan, the corporate tax rate went from 46 to 34%, and according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for the 10 years following that, wages went down.
Yeah, so because all of that is dependent on the kind of job that's being created. Okay, ultimately, a stock clerk job at Target is never going to pay $80,000 a year, and so while that is not a dead-end job, because any job teaches you, any job, I don't believe there's such thing as a dead-end job. We also have to have a system in place where the stock clerk at a Target or a Walmart can one day become a manager or go into a different profession and make $100,000 a year, but they can't because they have to work full-time. It costs too much to go back to school. They now have kids. If we do not retrain people with 21st century skills, we will never be able to increase wages in America. We have to make those jobs. We have to make sure those jobs are being created here, but we also have to make sure that people can acquire the skills they need for those jobs.
All right, let's move on to a couple of other topics. I want to talk about DeFede Johnson, the American soldier who was from here, who died in Niger along with 3 others. You sit on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I know there's not a lot you can sort of say, but what can you tell us? What have you learned in the weeks that have followed?
Well, I've learned, first of all, that he was a hero, and I went to that funeral, and just to see that family and the pain they go through is just, even around this time of year and Thanksgiving, you just think about those families who are away from their loved ones. This is a young man who grew up in our community. You see the pictures. You recognize some of the places in the background and some of the pictures he took. So it really brought it home. That case involves a lot of elements that include classified operations and why it's been so difficult to kind of disclose some of this publicly. I do believe his family is entitled to all the information. I know they're taking it seriously, but I can tell you he was heroic in the service to our country, and what happened to him was a terrible, terrible tragedy. Was
it an intelligence failure? Should we have known better what they were getting into?
I think you could potentially arrive at that conclusion that there are things that could have been done better, but ultimately they were in a dangerous environment. That was known to all, and I think we'll learn at the end of the day that there were some things that happened that were not anticipated, that perhaps could not have been anticipated. But the heroism, when this story is told, I think people are going to be blown away by how heroic he was and the other gentlemen with him were as well.
The Russia probe, let's stick with the Senate Intelligence Committee. When do you think it will wrap up, and will there be a clear conclusion as to the Senate Intelligence Committee's work?
So it'll wrap up because when we have all the information before us.
When do you think that will be?
Well, it depends on how cooperative people want to be. And the problem we're having there is that every time we think we know everything about something, something new emerges. And so what we don't want to do is issue a report that's missing things, because then that leads to conspiracy theories and or the idea that somehow we didn't want to do our job. I think there is already a clear conclusion. The Russian government, under Vladimir Putin, undertook a systematic effort to try to interfere in the Americans' elections, primarily by pitting and dividing Americans against each other. I think we could write that report now. I think the critical element that people want to know is how did they do it so we can protect ourselves from it in the future. On the fundamental issue of collusion, it is my view that that belongs to the special counsel. We're not the FBI, we're not a law enforcement entity. If we uncover information that's relevant to collusion, that would be turned over to the special counsel.
Do you still have confidence in the special counsel?
I do. I've never lacked confidence that they're going to do a thorough job. At the end of the day, I believe Mr. Mueller is going to do a thorough and fair investigation, and until that's disproven, I'll continue to believe it based on his record of service to our country.
Marco Rubio, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in.
Thank you.
It's always a quick half hour with you when we go through this stuff.
I'm glad to do it.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back after the break.